Sometimes there's things in life that the timing of which and the synchronicity of their occurrence, of them happening, is well beyond the odds, and one is left with the conclusion that there must be something else at work. Such was the case when my daughter was having a lunch with a friend, an older friend my age, um, in Elk Grove, and they were sitting around having this lunch, and her friend was very melancholy and a little depressed and down and sad because this was the very day of the anniversary that her son was killed in a car crash in the countryside of Elk Grove. And so she was sitting there having this meal. When they finished, my daughter thought, oh, well, why don't we go out for a ride? You know, the Tour of California, these bicycle races, it takes place in Elk Grove. In fact, there's a stage that ends in Elk Grove on this very day. And it started in Stockton, and it went through the countryside and the farm communities, and it ends up in being near Elk Grove Boulevard. And she decided that that might be a good thing to cheer her friend up, and so they drove out of the country. I was at the finish line. I didn't know they were even involved in this. I was at the finish line where they had this big, huge television screen where you could see the race from the helicopter, and I was watching the race there with a few thousand people at the finish line waiting for the thing to come, and I could see the crowds, and I saw different people, and I didn't know I was watching it. At one point, I was actually watching my daughter and her friend as they drove into the country. They drove out by just about a mile or so from the finish line, a couple miles, and they drove by Green Street, or whatever, Green Road, whatever the road is out there, and that's exactly where her son crashed into a tree a number of years before and was killed. And so she was like, wow, this is where my son got killed. And they didn't really expect to see that. And then they got to the intersection, and the road was blocked because the police were blocking it off for the racers to come within the next 10 or 15 minutes. So they blocked off the intersection. So they decided they're going to watch the race from there. They saw 4 or 5 people standing next to some farms and some houses along the road. So they pulled off, got out of their car, and they stood with this small group of people along the roadside. And within minutes, the peloton starts coming past them very quickly. And then all of a sudden, this woman's standing there, and somebody from the middle of the peloton, which you couldn't see who, threw an empty water bottle right at her. And instead of her ducking and letting it fall, she instinctively just grabbed it out of the air. And when she looked at the water bottle, written with black marker 3 times around this bottle was the name Scott, which was the name of her son. And so she looks at the bottle and she sees her son's name on this thing. There's no other bottles being thrown at her. And here she is with one that says Scott, Scott, Scott. It got to her. But she knew that the universe was trying to communicate with her, and she felt that it was successful, that her son was okay. And on his anniversary day of his passing, she got this water bottle with his name on it. Now, coincidence? What's the odds? There was 100 and some riders, almost 200 riders in the race. Could have been any name on any bottle. And the very bottle with Scott, Scott, Scott written on it ends up in her hands, and she ends up at that place on that street in view down the street of where her son got killed, actually having that bottle in her hand. Anyway, when I got home and my daughter told me the story, I shared it originally, and then I decided now to do a video on it and share it. Because to me, there's more than coincidence involved here. There's something much greater. And it's about love. It's about when you pass away, you still can communicate with people that you love with. Anyway, I thought I would share that story. I think it has a beautiful message about love never dying. God bless everyone.